Welcome everyone to this week's F3 track guide. We are at Laguna Seca. Now, it's not one of my favourite tracks. I'm not a big fan of this track in any car, for that matter. It's world famous for its corkscrew turn, and also well known for its T1 and T2, the Andretti hairpin. And yeah, I'm just not a big fan here. There's no room for error. Gravel everywhere. There's only one off area, which is in the last corner, and I don't know, it just doesn't suit my eye. There's a few corners here that I really struggle with, and just it doesn't really suit my eye and my driving style. But is what it is. Have to make do with it. And in particular, this race this week, this track is personally all about consistency. As always, we want to go as quick as possible, but this is about being able to put in consistent lap times because, as I've said, there's no room for error. There's gravel everywhere. If you keep it consistent and you keep it on track for 23 laps, which is how long the race is, you will have a good result, regardless if you start from the very back of the grid or if very back of the grid upwards, because people are going to have accidents. There's going to be lots of incidents into the first corner, especially with cold tyres and with everyone at the start, and the corkscrew. The corkscrew throughout the whole race, you're never safe from it. There's incidents happening pretty much every lap on that corkscrew, whether it be lockups or people just generally struggling and crashing. So consistency is the key around here. I'm not the quickest around here, so my flying lap is not going to be anywhere near what the top guys can do. I have already run a race around here and my lap time was good. I qualified in the top 2, but as I just said, I had a couple of incidents, a couple of off tracks which cost me dearly, because it's gravel. It's very difficult to keep control and get back onto the track. So I managed to scrape and save a good result, but it could have been so much better if I just kept it clean. But as always, we're going to have a slow drive through around track, braking markers, looking at turning points, which is very important around here, especially as it's a very technical track, couple of tricky corners, and we'll have a flying lap with a far chase replay afterwards. So yeah, remember to hit that like and subscribe button, turn those notifications on, and let's head into it. So here we are, guys, on the start finish line. Now, before I start, I just want to quickly say that I'm using the setup from Craig's setup shop. I also did test out Suelio Almeida's. Anyone who doesn't know who Suelio is, he is the Division 1 winner of the F3 season, I think, for the last 2 to 3 years. Very, very quick driver. He provides free setups that are available to grab from the Formula 3 forum on iRacing. So by all means, go and test that out. His setups are very good, but me personally, I'm just quicker with this one this week. So we are using the Craig's setup shop. So the gears are slightly different compared to Suelio's setup. So just if you're using this as a comparison. So we are going to head down the start-finish straight. Well, start-finish dog leg, because it's a slight left dog leg. And as we come over the hill, you want to kind of stay to the left-hand side and cover as little track as possible. And allow the car to move over to the right-hand side, because we want to open up the left-hander T1, the Andretti hairpin. Now, what you are keeping an eye out for is this white line just off, this white line, and the number 3 marker. Now, personally, it depends on how good you are on the braking. I've got load cell pedals, so I'm quite consistent with my braking, and I feel like I can brake a little bit harder than I used to with my old pedals, which didn't have load cells. So it's all kind of down to preference, and remember consistency and keeping it clean, because you will see a lot of people go off at this corner just from missing their braking point. So I use the number 3 marker as my braking point, or just after, and I will be up in 6th gear at this point, and I will brake down into 3rd, and then As I'm braking, a little bit of trail brake, keeping it as tight to the sausage curb as we can. Want to avoid the sausage curb because it's an off track and it throws you off. As tight as we can, and then I will shift down into second. While braking, lift off the brake, let the car roll because I don't want it to come to a complete stop. Let the car roll, and then as I'm halfway through the corner, I'm turning in and I'm on the throttle again. Not full throttle, around about half throttle, keeping it tight to this blue curb. Because the car's going to come out, because it's technically a double corner. And then as you get on the exit, full on the throttle, all the way up into the gears, moving quickly over to the left hand side for turn 3. Now this is one of the corners that I particularly don't like and took me a lot of practice to get used to, and there's a couple of ways to take this corner. Now there is the fast way, and if there is a way to take it if you are struggling, and it's very simple. It's just a case of taking it in different gears. Now the quickest way to do it, I've found, is as you move over to this left hand side, just after the 2, you're going to start braking, and as you get to the 1, you're then going to start turning in, staying in 4th gear, allowing the car to roll in, a little bit of trail brake, but allowing the car to roll in, and then as soon as you get to this curb, full on the throttle. Now, it is a little bit difficult, I've found. Some other people may not find it difficult, but I've found it a little bit difficult to kind of get the turning point right with this. I don't know if it's because I've kind of gone in too fast or too slow. I seem to be a little bit better at it now. But what I've found is an easier or a more consistent way to get through it is, as you're braking, shift down to 3rd gear, because it just allows the car to turn a little bit more, to rotate on its axis, because it's very easy to get on the throttle through here and just run wide, and you get off on this gravel and you're off. So yeah, practice, do it. 4th is quicker, but if you're struggling to get the turning point and get the car rotated through and you keep going off or hitting that sausage curb, shift down into 3rd, because it will just slightly slow the car down a little bit more, but it will allow the car to rotate through the corner. So as we're coming through, we're full flat on the throttle, and we come to turn 4, and we are keeping an eye out for in between or just before the first marker. Just before the first marker, because what we're going to do is you'll be up into 5th gear. So you'll go from 4th to 5th, and we will turn in on the 1, and we will just before the 1, and we will slightly lift off the throttle. You're going to be about 3/4 throttle, keeping it tight to that sausage curb, and then as you come out back full on the throttle, you can't take that full throttle through there because you will just go too far wide, and yeah, you'll spin, you'll hit the tyres on the right hand side, and it just causes an absolute nightmare. So that turn 4 is a lot easier than turn 5, but we're not using any brake back there. It's just a slight lift of the throttle. You'll see that in the flying lap. So in this setup, you will get up into 6th gear, and we are keeping an eye out for this white line on the right hand side and the number 2 marker. Now, I brake around about in between those two. I find if you brake on the 2nd, it's very difficult to get the car slowing down. You can brake on the 2nd, but it kind of affects your exit on the way through. So I brake just before it, or just in between the white line here on your right hand side and the number 2 marker. And then I'm trail braking. I shift down from 6th to 4th, keeping it tight to this sausage curb as we can, and then full throttle, allowing the car to come out right. Make use of that runoff, and then we come up to the kink, which is a very difficult corner. So what we're keeping an eye out for, guys, are the markers on the right hand side up to the kink, and we are in particular looking for the number 2 marker. This is a very important one because the kink is actually a blind corner. If you can see, there's a slight crest and you can't actually see the corner itself. You can see the track run up the left hand sides, run over to the left up the hill, but we can't see the kink. And there's actually anyone who's driven around here knows there's a nasty sausage curb, which is a race ender here, because you hit that sausage curb, it throws your car off, because it's quite a sharp left-hander, and you'll end up in the wall, you end up in the gravel, and you'll be very lucky to survive and then be able to carry on with your race. Now, what we're going to be doing is we aren't actually going to be braking here. We're only going to be slightly lifting off the throttle. Around about, if you don't feel that comfortable, half throttle. If you feel a little bit more comfortable, feel a bit braver, around about 3/4. But this is also your turning point as well. So it's your lift off point and your turning point. Because as you get to the 2, you slightly lift off and we start to turn in, because that curb comes straight into view very quickly. And what you want to do is, as you're lifting off the throttle, you'll go down, keeping it tight to the sausage curb, but not hitting it, of course. And it's at this point you get back on the throttle, full throttle, allowing the car to move out to the right slightly. Ideally keeping it off this grey stuff, this grey curb, because the car does bottom out and it sticks to it like glue. It's like a train track or railroad track, and you won't be able to kind of get it off there until you get a little bit further where it shallows out. So it's a little bit annoying, sacrifices a bit of time, so ideally you want to get as tight to that as possible but not actually on it. And then what you want to do is move over to the left hand side as quick as you can, pretty much, because you want to cover as little track as possible. And believe it or not, this does make up quite a bit of time, a couple of attempts up this hill rather than leaving it outright. And your full throttle all the way up here in 5th gear. Very rarely do I reach 6th. I know with Suelio's setup, you don't reach 6th, you're in 5th gear. And we come up to the dreaded corkscrew. Now, we can't actually see it at the moment because we're coming up to the crest, coming up to the hill. But what we're keeping an eye out for is this number 3 marker. Now, it is just on this marker, or slightly just before it, depends how good you are on the brakes, is your braking marker. And you will brake all the way down to 2nd gear, holding the middle of the track, moving over to the left, because we don't want to get too shallow. What I've done from personal experience is that I've come into this a little bit too shallow. While I've made the corner, I don't get the optimum speed. I don't get the optimum entry out of the corkscrew, and I can lose a couple of attempts, which makes, especially in qualifying, makes all the difference. So we want to hold the track, and you're not going quickly down the gears as you're braking. 4th to 3rd, and then just before you shift down into 2nd, because we want to make sure that the car still rolls through. Tight to the blue curb as possible. You won't get an off track if you stick 2 wheels onto the dirt there, onto the gravel. And then we're in 2nd gear, and then you're just lifting off the throttle as you come through. You're lifting off the throttle, allowing the car to get over the hill, turn the car right slightly, and then back on the throttle. Because the revs hit the rev limiter. If you hold if you get on the throttle too early, as the car comes down, because it does have a little bit of a jump, as the car comes back down with all 4 tyres onto the tarmac, onto the track, it will just spin out from underneath itself. So yeah, you do need a slight lift there, and then it's only when you get on the downhill path that you're then able to get back onto the throttle. And you just have to be careful as well of the gravel. As always, you can spin and you can get a slowdown there. So I would personally practice going through that slower first and then build up the speed, rather than going through there too fast to start off with. And just, you're better off going through the corkscrew slower than you are fast. So don't get into that bad habit. Now we come into the fast left-hander, the third from last corner. And what you want to do is you want to bring your car out a little bit to the wide, a little bit out wide. You don't want to bring it all the way out to the blue curb, because this is full throttle, this corner. When you've got full fuel cold tyres, you will need a slight lift, but this is a full throttle corner. Now in this setup, you will be fourth gear, flat to the floor. Around about here, around about as you reach the corner, you will need to shift up into fifth. And then you want to keep it as tight to this red curb as possible, allowing the car to come out right, which it will do. And then quickly bring it back over to the left. You'll be in fifth gear. And this is one of the other tricky corners which I do struggle with. I don't think I've hit this corner perfect yet. Hopefully I can do it in the flying lap for you. But what you want to do is, as you get onto this 2 marker, or just after it, you want to get onto the brakes. Shift down into fourth. As you hit the first marker, because that is your shift down marker and also your turning marker. Because as you come through around about here, you can get on the power a lot earlier than you think. Because once again, we want to get on this curb, or get as close to that sausage curb as we can, and allow the car to drift out left. Full throttle, up to fifth, to the last corner. Now, quite a sharp left-hander this, quite a slow one. And we are keeping an eye out for the number 2 marker. This is your braking marker. So just after this, or on it, depending on how confident you are on the brakes, shift down into second. As the sausage curb comes into view, start to turn in, keeping it as tight as you can. You can go over that sausage curb. Now you can go over it, but it is an off track. And in some cases you'll get a slowdown. So be careful, but it is a curve that you can get away with going over without suffering any damage. But don't do it because it's an off track. And then as you get onto it, slowly on the throttle, on the way out, because especially in qualifying it's so important, not necessarily in the race because it's only a single off track, but it's very easy to get an off track here and run wide. It's quite a harsh one, but you'll come out of there in second gear, so be careful of how quickly you get on the throttle, on the power out on the exit, because this is, you can have you could run the perfect lap, be green in every sector, purple in every sector, and then you come to the last corner and you get a silly off track. And it does happen. It's happened to me so many times. So just be careful. And then we are full throttle up to the finish line. And that, guys, is a drive-through around Laguna Seca. So I hope that's been educational for you guys, good for you. It's, like I said, it's all about consistency around here. Personally, running consistent lap times, of course, improving and gaining any time where you can. But you keep it on track around here for 23 laps, you will more than likely have a good finish, and you'll pick up iRacing and you'll pick up results. So yeah, if you're further up the field and you get a good qualifying, keeping it clean is where it's at. So yeah, Hope that takes some time off your lap times. Let's head into the fire lap and the fire chase camera angle.